let's test this thesis of dependency. Could it not be true that it is South Africa that depends on these countries? How many academics come from all of these countries that teach in this institution? So, I suspect that the dependence is more, it's this place that depends more on these other societies than them depending, on South Africa. The solution, every time I talk about, the subject and many other problems that this country is afflicted with, quickly people ask, what is to be done? I'm wary of rushing into what is to be done. I suspect I do know what is to be done. But first we must understand what the problem is. We must understand the problem in its totality. Because then what is going to happen is that, as you know, action that is not preceded by thought, is a reflex.
Reactionary.
And so what we're going to engage in, are basically reflexive or knee-jerk reactions to this, but then the structure doesn't change. First, we must understand the structure, that produces the problem and reproduces the problem. Once we have understood exactly the nature of our problem, no one needs to tell you the solution. When you know, what's your problem, the solution comes automatically. You know what you need to avoid. When you know that if I walk through this path, I'm going to get to the edge and tip, that you then take a different path. I think first we must patiently, and remember that, Western knowledge has built itself into our structures of life over centuries. So we're not going to wake up tomorrow and get out of it. The task of decolonizing this is not going to be achieved in a year or two. Think of just the university alone. The task of decolonizing knowledge and the university alone. Think of it, UCT. If white academics at UCT said, wait, Bana, you've made too much noise. We leave this institution for you. Teach the kind of knowledge that you want to teach. What will happen? We'll go after them, we'll run after them and say, we're sorry. We don't have people to teach us. Please come back. That's the first reality that we have to face. So the task of decolonizing these institutions is not one that, we're going to achieve overnight. It's not one that we're going to achieve in a year or two. But it's also one that is not just, we're going to achieve through political protest. It requires something more than just political protest. First we must answer. So when we want decolonized knowledge and decolonized institutions, who is going to teach it? Who has a responsibility to teach it? So the first answer is, the first question we must pose it to ourselves. So when we are not ready to stay longer in these institutions and study further, when you clamor for decolonized knowledge, who are you asking it for from? From Max Price. He doesn't owe it to you. He has no interest, he doesn't know what it looks like. He's white, he's European, he knows only European knowledge, and he has no interest to get out of it. So the first question we must pose to ourselves, are we going to be sitting and waiting for, someone to deliver this education to us? I suspect that, we would have to, if we're thinking about the solution, we would have to first understand the problem holistically, So if, for instance, we go to a point of understanding that, this country, with all the 25 universities it has, it doesn't have more than 20 black professors of political science? It doesn't have more than 25 black South African professors of political science. How many do you know?
You.
They are not, in fact, 25 is too much. You can't count more than 15. Now, this is political science, you know. This is before you get to the other disciplines. So it means that, you know, let us be more honest with ourselves and be ready to do the hard work. You know, let us not expect that someone else has the responsibility to do the hard work and we sit idly by and wait for it to be delivered to us. You know, why is it that now we are in a hurry? After the first degree, you want to go and work and buy a cheap i10 and think that you have achieved something in life when you drive an i10. There has to be something. Our values have to change. You know, our ethical values as black people would have to change. You know, there's something else that we have to do in order for us to get to the solution. Because the hurry to say what is the solution, okay, give us, you know, the 10 point, what needs to happen? No, it's more than that. You know, it requires an introspection into ourselves. You know, I've taught in a number of universities. And one of the things I like doing is studying, you know, people. I have a good, you know, social science eye. When you stand tomorrow when you go to campus, go stand on the Jamie staircase and watch the black students walk around campus. Do you get a sense that this is a generation that can show up a country tomorrow? Yeah. That can run and hold a country together tomorrow? Do we inspire confidence in the way we carry ourselves in our lives? So I suspect that, you know, there is something else that, you know, there is a different conversation that we still need to have amongst ourselves, you know, in order to get to this supposition that, you know, there is a solution that is external to us, you know. I suspect that, you know, is not going to take us far. I mean, I do not know whether my talk was about, you know, depression and you know, look, people have different problems. People have different problems. I can talk about what happens when you come to these institutions, when you lack the necessary cultural resources to resist its alienating culture. Now, because what happens is that as black people, as I've explained, you know, these universities are steeped within a certain culture context. So when you come here as a black student, as a black academic, you must first get out of your own culture. You must get out of, you know, your own orientation and assimilate into this Western or white, you know, culture context. Now, in that process, of course, you lose your, you know, pillars. You lose your moorings as a person. You know, what grounds you in society or what grounds you in life generally. And it so happens that when you then no longer have, you know, those supports in life, your life is likely, you know, to be affected in different ways. But a large part of also the explanation is that what these institutions do is to tell us that our own cultures, you know, are barbaric, they are, you know, they are traditional, and so when you've become modern and become a university person, you must leave them behind. You know, let me exemplify with my own life. So I started working at UCT last year, in January. 3 months after I had started working here, I told a friend in the department, well, it's time to go home. It's time to go home and slaughter and thank the ancestors for giving me the job. Now, if you have internalized Western forms of life, you do not understand that, it's your ancestors that gave you the job. To be a modern rational person supposes that it's your certificate, it's your ability, that enabled you to get to that point. Now we no longer have the supports, that we previously have, the cultural, structures that steadied us in life, because part of what this education does is to turn us away from our cultures. And then because we no longer have that cultural language at times, we then fall onto existing categories. So it's anxiety, it's depression, it's other things when your ancestors are angry with you. You then, because you no longer have that language, it no longer makes sense to you. What makes sense, is the language of clinical psychology. You then fall into that. And they try everything they know, but then you still don't get better. And then, you say you don't know what is wrong with you because you no longer have, those others. So I'm wary of saying that the answer is one, is that this is what the institution does, and there is certainly a dislocation that happens because the institutions are alienating culturally. But there is something much larger. It is that culturally we've been made to live in a cultural void. We've been denied our own cultures, that previously provided answers to many contradictions that we face in life. So we no longer have those resources. I thank you very much.